Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am Madcapper and this is another video on Raid Shadow Legends. While my main account here is seldom used, and hey, you guys, if you've been watching the channel, know I am a free-to-play player working on a free-to-play account only. I've all but retired this account, but we're going to jump on it to do a nice little video. The video is something I'm learning quite quickly while playing my free-to-play. By the way, free-to-play, every morning I'm recording free-to-play episodes, Monday through Friday. Weekend, we're doing it live. Friday nights, we're getting the I built them so you don't have to. And then every once in a while, I'll throw in an extra video like this one here. Today, I want to go over the 20 most critical epic champions that you can use out of the box. Why? Because books in this game are obscenely scarce. It is absolutely shocking to me how hard it is to get epic books in this game. I knew about legendary books. We all knew about it. Heck, my main account knows about it. If you take a look here, and I do book a lot of champions, but if we take a look at my upgrade skills, I have 4 legendary books in 2 weeks of farming. Now, there's no extra books here from pulling shards or any of the tournaments. This is strictly from the clan boss. I'm going to be going into tomorrow's CVC with 4 books. And in case you're looking at the epics and going, well, you got 20 epics. Yeah. Being able to farm Ultra Nightmare, Nightmare, Brutal, and Hard every single day, minus 8 books, because I get 4 books free every week from Plarium as part of the content creator program. That means I've gotten 12 epic books in 2 weeks, farming 4 bosses virtually every day. A couple days I miss Hard, but I always get the other 3, and that's what I have to show for it. This game does not give books. 20 books is 1, maybe 2 champions at best. 4 books is months. So why is this video important? Because it helps you decide what champions you want to focus when getting into the game. So without further ado, let's talk about the 20 most important epics that a free-play team can use in Raid Shadow Legends. So the first 2 are going to be cheats, but that's okay. The first one, number 20, is going to be login champs. There are 2 login champs that are important, and the cheat here is not only am I putting 2 champions, but one of them is a legendary. The first one I want to talk about is High Katoon. Why is she so good out the box? Because she doesn't need books to do what you need her to do. Absolutely, if you're going to use her in Clan Boss for certain teams, then yeah, book away. But for those of you who are just looking for her for what she is most useful for, and that is Arena as a speed lead, or if you have a better speed lead, for example, Sun Wukong, then just this right here, which when ascended is a 15% turn meter boost, plus a 30% increased speed buff on all allies. This is how you want to start out your run. You want to be able to boost with her into a debuff or crowd control, into a debuff and crowd control, and then a nuke, or maybe 2 nukes, whatever it may be. But turn meter manipulation, one of the strongest things in, and 30 days in, you get someone. You don't need this cooldown, because if you have gotten back to this point, you've either probably already won or lost the match. 90% of all fights, especially in the early mid game on Arena, are completed within the first 3 turns, or at least the decision has been made, even if it takes you a few extra times to hit that ultimate Death Knight. Those of you in Silver know exactly what I mean by that. So the first one is High Katoon, and the other one of the group I'm going to say is Syl the Drakes. Now, Syl the Drakes gets ridiculously better the more books you put into her, but the reality is, because of her passive that you get at Ascension, she heals all allies by 10% of their max HP at the start of each turn. You make her a little bit fast, she's healing your champions every single time. Yes, it is important to get these cooldowns down to 4 turn. Yes, it is good when her AoE stun is down to, or sorry, at 20%, it's an AoE hit with a stun, is better at 3 turn cooldown. And yes, it's even better when you get that 35% instead of 20%. The reality is, even without that, this champion is very strong, very helpful for your team, and will help you succeed in that early to mid game at that 6 months in on a free-to-play account. Number 19, farmable champions. I'm cheating again. This time we're talking about rares, but there are farmable champions within this game that you can get and can help you in the immediate. Now, Valerie has some good use in her, but that's not who we're really talking about. There are some other champions that can be used to some degree, But the two that I absolutely want to talk about is, of course, War Maiden, who gives you the chance to basically use her as book. So you keep farming this stage. You do 9-4, which has a slightly better chance of her dropping because of a code error. You've got a 75. You can book it by using dupes of her as you get them. And so she is a completely farmable, 0 book needed, technically, right? Because you can get her from farming. Now, it does still cost energy. Is it worth it? I think so. At the end of the day, you sacrifice about 1,600 energy per food per run, so times 3 typically, right? You have 1 farmer, 3 food. But the flip side is, as you get her, you're going to be able to make and build her out. I do think that she has lost some value because you can get a deacon for free with a starting code. You can also there's also way more decreased defense, but the reality is she's sitting right here, easy to get. Maybe you have an Android and you decide, I want that free Mordecai instead. So you go with Mordecai for free, then you get the War Maiden, and you're set in that early game, even if you don't pull, like I did, a Stag Knight a mere few days later. The other champion that's free to play, and I actually have him somewhere else, so we'll talk about that because he's a special case. But the other big one I want to talk about is Diabolist. This is where you're going to be farming the most already. 12-3, you're going to be farming this to make your food. And she is actually vastly underrated. She has a 30% increased speed buff on all allies. She can also fill the turn meter of all allies by 15% and decrease the turn meter of enemies on a 4-turn cooldown. And again, all books are farmable because you can use her to book herself. This is something that you will just passively get as you are building. And if you haven't gotten a turn meter, or you don't feel like you want to use High Katoon in your team, Diabolist can absolutely do the job for you. She can do the turn meter increase plus decrease, which is such a huge skill at level 3 Ascension. And she can put the big increased speed on all allies on a 3-turn cooldown once you get her own books, which, by the way, this is an AoE, stun set, hex set, all that stuff applies. And then even has a 20% chance of placing a sleep debuff, which is whatever. But the reality is, for value, there are fewer champions that give you that kind of value for free in this game. And unlike War Maiden, where you have to sacrifice XP, you're not sacrificing anything to get Diabolist. I tell you, if you're not using Deacon, especially if you don't go for Deacon, which does have that turn meter manipulation, or you don't get an Apothecary who also has some turn meter, this champion might arguably be better than both because she can also decrease the enemy on the same turn a la Lysandra, making it a double way, like making it exponentially better. So keep an eye on Diabolist. Don't forget her. Before I get to the main 18 single champions, I do want to make a little bit of note. First off, these are in no particular order. I literally went through the index here and chose them by that. So as I went through, I went, oh, this is a champion that works really well. Oh, this is a champion, did it like that. So there's no order here. You can figure out based on your particular team which order makes the most sense to you. The other thing is I didn't include any champions that were daily login champions or new account champions or anything like that, which is why someone like Deacon, arguably because you can get him free from day one, would be on this list. But the fact that he's part of that kind of world, I didn't want to add it. Sun Wukong, Rhonda, Ninja, all those ones, they were limited or unlimited Ultimate Death Knight. I'm not going to include them in this list because it's you get them from free in a timed period. Not everyone can get them. Not everyone you have to choose. Those are on their own world. So these are champions that you have to pull from shards. Eventually, other than the first 2, obviously, the next 18, with the exception of 1, which we'll get to shortly. But let's start with the final 18. The countdown is started, and I want to start with no longer new champion, but definitely a newer champion, and it's not who you think it might be. It's actually Sir Artemage. Why is Sir Artemage a great champion for a free-to-play player? Because none of his abilities, his key ability here, which attacks an enemy, ignores 30% defense, places an increased attack and crit damage if the attack kills an enemy, and these can't be removed, requires no percentage increase decrease, like some do, 75% chance to blah, 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 and requires no skill cooldown. This is on a 4-turn out the box. Now, there is a cooldown here, but it's very cheap at a 3-book cooldown, and this is removes all debuffs from himself and attacks all enemies. So what you want to do is you want to use this, hit a target, hopefully you'll kill an enemy, and then you can follow up with the A2 to kill the rest of them. Or maybe you do it the other way, who knows. Also has a 20% increase aura in arena, and an A1 that has a reasonably good chance, even without books, to land that decreased defense and decreased speed. Very strong. They're the big versions of both on an A1 at 40% unbooked. Pretty strong opportunity. Next on the list is and has to be Stag Knight. Now, Stag Knight does need books, so that is the downfall of him, but he is too strong a champion anyway, and the big deal with him is even at 4-turn, even at 70% chance, the decreased defense with the decreased attack on a single champion in this game is one of the most, if not the most, powerful debuff in the game. This will automatically make any team you have better because you don't have to find that decreased attack. Most of the time, for example, you farmed War Maiden. She's got that decreased defense. Excellent. But you still need the decreased attack for survivability, especially in the early game and even into the mid game. This solves the problem. There's very few champions that have this problem solver, and Stag Knight's one of them. But the reason why I put him on the list and not some other ones is because he's only got 2 skills, which means some early opportunity to use reflex gear, to potentially even use relentless gear to lower those cooldowns, and the fact that he's got a passive that potentially can make every other champion on your team that much stronger. Why? It puts a 1-turn increase accuracy if they get resisted. In the early game, accuracy is a tough thing to get. Say you're running another champion that's got multiple, it has to have multiple debuff skills, because remember, your one skill's gone on cooldown. If it gets resisted and they don't have any other debuffs, it's a useless skill. So potentially it can be really good. Potentially it's kind of useless. Just keep that in mind. But potentially, this can make some of your champions. For example, Kale misses on his A1. Oh, darn. Doesn't put that 2.5% poison. Gets the increased accuracy. Comes down to his A3. Lands it with ease. Puts, well, if it's me, puts 0 buffs anyway because there's a chance. But for you guys, 2 or 3 poisons on the dragon, and you have a much better run. Stag Knight making any other champion that much better, plus the pure strength of decreased defense and decreased attack is why I put him on the list. Next on the list, we have, now this is one of the craziest, and people tend to forget, and he's been around forever, but to me, Royal Guard is the ultimate in plug and play. There's only a couple champions I'd put above him in that, just that he does what you need him to do the second you pull him, of course, with gear and levels, but his A2, which is why you have him. The rest of the stuff is a bonus. This is why you have Royal Guard, enemy max HP, 4-turn cooldown, AoE, no books needed. Is that extra 20% good? Yeah. Do you want it? Sure. Do you need it at any time? Absolutely not. This is a champion you can put on the back burner until you can somehow, find a epic book leprechaun that's running across the screen that you can thwack for a few extra books. Now, he does have an A1 that has a 65% chance when booked, but guess what? Again, I'll take a 50-50 on an A1 any day, especially on something as strong as a decreased defense. And even his decreased speed, yes, it's a 5-turn cooldown. It's an extra bonus at 4 times at random. Hits pretty hard. But again, the whole point of this guy is this ability, and you can use it right away. Also, he has an ally attack in dungeons by 35%, which, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments down below, is the biggest aura in dungeons for an attack champion in the game. There's a lot of 33, and I think there's a 40 in campaign from Relic Keeper, if I recall, or maybe it's a 50. It's something crazy. But I can't think of a single champion that has higher than 35% attack in dungeons. So, Royal Guard, right out of the box, absolutely game changer. Well, you know what they say, spring's eternal? That is hope. And a lot of people overlook her, but her buffs have made her viable. And I will tell you right now, her speed of 104, her HP of 21,315 out the box makes her a game changer for you, whether you realize it or not. The reality is her A2 runs on a 4-turn cooldown, and a 25% of this champion's HP shield buff for 2 turns. This in progression is obscene. She can get huge amounts of HP, even in the early game. She can have north of 50, 60,000, and you can build her out in the late game, end game, to be well over 100,000, and it's a 4-turn cooldown. You can look at her other abilities and say, well, this needs a cooldown, but it's only a 50% chance of removing buffs. It's not as strong, even at a 75%. This is nice to have, but really, if you're building hope, you're not building someone for a 50% chance to hopefully remove buffs. You're building her for one reason. You need shields now, and she's going to give you them. That's why she's absolutely out of the box usable in this game. The next one, also from this group, is Phoenix. Now, why Phoenix? He does need books, absolutely. Does he have a lot of cooldowns? Absolutely. But arguably, his best skill and the hardest hitting, unconditional sort of A1, it is conditional, but it's one of the hardest hitting A1s in the game. The only other one that I've tested that really comes close is Alika, only because she gets a 50% chance of hitting a second time. Whereas Phoenix, as long as they have any debuffs, he gets the extra hit and it blocks revive. This skill is absolutely ridiculous. It can change lives in the arena. And so even if you have no books anywhere else, just being able to use his A1 on enemy champions in the arena makes him an out-the-box type of champion. Next up, we're moving on good now. I have one Barbarian I do want to mention. I should mention him in the Farmable because he is a Farmable champion, but he's so unique. I wanted to put it in here, and that's Shield Guard. Shield Guard is Farmable. He's free. He's not epic. He's not epic books. You can farm his own books, but he's only got 2 skills, and he has himself being able to cleanse himself of 1 item, and he has a 2-turn cooldown when booked by himself, and he's a defense-based champion, so he's a lot easier to keep survivable. Shield Guard is such a rare and unique, well, I guess an uncommonly unique champion in this game. I think so many people overlook him. Even when I'm building him, I've overlooked him. I've passed him over for other champions to use in specific locations, but the reality is Shield Guard could be pretty crazy, and with a 1,000 defense, 15,000 HP, maybe he could be the stun target in Clan Boss. He can cleanse himself, right? That way he can go and he can heal himself with a well-timed heal proc. So don't forget Shield Guard next on my list. From Ogryn Tribes, Skull Crusher. Skull Crusher has 2 skills. Skull Crusher can, much like Shield Guard, decrease the duration of all debuffs on this champion by 1 turn. So if he's stunned, he can get rid of it. Now keep in mind, cooldowns happen before abilities. So the cooldown won't be affected by this. He'll still lose a cooldown, but at least he can cleanse himself. And even at 4 turns, when only 3 champions in the entire game have an AoE counterattack ability, this ability is just so much stronger than anything else an epic has on support level in this game. Counterattack, ally protection, and an unkillable on this champion. This ability is obscene, and it's why they have not in 4+ years added another champion even close to what he can do. I don't care if you get books in him, by the way, only needs 1 book to land and only needs 5 books total. Can you imagine 5 books total? That hasn't happened in a long time. Probably won't happen for a long time to come. This is absolutely a free-to-play dream on any account. Heck, it's a low spend, mid spend dream on most accounts. Skull Crusher, one of the top champions epic in the game, and absolutely usable out the box. Believe it or not, we're skipping Lizardmen because I felt like the epic Lizardmen that are actually good do need books, whereas this champion, the more the books, the better. But let me tell you, out of the box, Akemptum still reigns supreme in this area. What you get is you get an ally or a speed in all battles by 18%. All battles. It's an absolute crazy ability to have on an epic. You've got a passive that, yes, has a booked 100, but even at 80%, it's an 80% chance of inflicting damage from 1 poison to enemies under Hex whenever their allies receive damage from poison. This can just get stupid crazy in any area where you have lots of enemies, wave clearing, spider clearing, you name the clearing. even at 80%, still ridiculously strong. And this here, yes, it needs 2-turn cooldown, but even without it, it's attacking enemies 3 times, putting a hex on them, and can increase the duration of any hex debuffs by 1 turn. So yes, it only has a 60%, but when you're hitting 3 times, you're going to land hex. If you're getting really smart about it, you use this champion or another champion in a hex outfit, and he can extend those, and then way to the races you go. This is a great champion without books that just gets better and better with every book you put in them. And the A1, again, hits an enemy 3 times, has a 40% chance of placing a poison. Yeah, great if it's 50, but still 3 times 40% on poisons. Yes, please, I'll take it. Kemptum, great champion out the box that just becomes god tier the more books you put in him. Well, Demon Spawn might be the best free to play epic haven of all the factions, whereas I didn't find anyone with the last 2 factions that were placed in this. I did find 3, and arguably probably could have found more in the Demon Spawn. The first one, Allure. Allure needs her A1. Her A1 is what makes her so important for Fire Knight, for Dark Fae, and overall, anytime you need single boss turn meter reduction where you can do it, she's there and she does it in spades. These other abilities are nice to have, but honestly, put your books elsewhere. These are not game changers. What is a game changer is the fact that she has 3 hits at random that decreases the target's turn meter by 25%. This is mind-blowing. It shocked me that they didn't nerf it when they changed this skill to allow the 3 times. But the truth is, this champion is a boss, and you're going to probably build her no matter who you are for Fire Knight at some point. So Allure, definitely on the list. But there's 2 more in the Demon Spawn world. The first one, Magnar. Now, Magnar does need books for cooldown, but honestly, everything else about this guy doesn't really matter. What matters is he hits twice with this ability in the arena. You don't need a cooldown when the enemy's dead, and this is the hardest hitting AoE champion unconditional in the game. Okay, he does have a conditional, but he does place an extra hit on enemies without HP burn debuffs. So if you're smart, you don't give him the chance to have that HP burn debuff. But even if he does, much like Trunda and her ability, if they do have an HP burn debuff, he just stuns them, which is not bad. Hey, it's better to kill them. It's second best to hold them in place till you can come and kill them on the next turn. Absolutely, Magnar. You just need to do him with plenty of HP, as much crit damage as you can, and just kill people before you need the cooldown to reset. When you get enough books and you're down in that world, then yeah, add some books to him. Get that cooldown to 3 turn. Will probably help you in some PvE content. But honestly, for arena, the damage is probably more important than the cooldown, to be perfectly honest with you. This guy can just kill people. Don't worry about the books until you can. Great champion for the free-to-play. And finally, in this Demon Spawn, Padma. Padma's a long-forgotten champion. I don't know how this is, but her A1 is sick. It attacks one enemy 2 times. If it's critical, it has an 85% chance of placing a decreased attack debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. This is her A1. It has a 15% chance to fail. If you are never going to put any books into her, then you get the mastery that allows an extra 5%. That's a 90% chance to land on her A1. Lock out her other 2 skills. Just use her A1. It's a 2-turn decrease attack. Therefore, I'm sure she's going to land it in 2 turns. Therefore, you've got 100% uptime on the decrease attack, unless you're my account, in which case, any of those RNG loopholes, I will land on. But for all the rest of you, you're more than fine. Somewhere down the road, you might put a few books into her and get this to 100%. But honestly, such an amazing champion out of the box. One of the best, if not the best A1. Well, one of the top 5 A1s in the game. Any chance you can hit one enemy. So again, you don't have to worry about, she's void affinity. You don't have to worry about weak hitting, and it places. So you don't have to worry about anything else. It's just going to place it. The only thing they can do is resist it. So make sure she has accuracy. Maybe you use Stagnite, who gives her a 50% increase accuracy. So if she misses the first time, she places it the second time. I know, I'm giving you next level stats. Anyway, Padma, one of the most underrated champions in the game, one of those key A1s that makes life easier if you pull her. She's on my list. The only downfall, of course, she is Void Affinity, so she is a little bit harder to get. When you talk about free to play, you talk about can the champion do what you want the champion to do without adding books. And in the case of Vogoth, yes, books make him insane. Books make him amazing. You get the provoke, you get the decreased attack, you get the extra chance of increasing the duration, you get this increased chance of leech. But at his core, you bring Vogoth and you build him for this ability and this ability alone, which whenever this champion's attacked, heals all allies by 50% of the damage received, 25% from bosses. He receives half that heal. That is on passive every time he's hit. There's no cooldown. There's no wait. If he's hit, he does this. That is an amazing ability out the box. Everything else is just gravy, but this is a champion you could never put a book into and get so much value out of throughout the entire game. In our Dark Elf world, I have one champion, which might surprise you, might not, and that's Madame Ceres. Why do I think Madame Ceres is an out-the-box, plug-and-play champion? Because her abilities are at 100%. Yes, she needs cooldowns, but she is removing buffs. She places an attack on all enemies. She's Void Affinity, but this doesn't attack anyways. This is just a place, so there's no check for an actual weak hit, which she can't do because she's Void. Yes, it's out of 6 turns, but similar to other champions in the arena, like I said, you can plug and play her into an arena. She doesn't even need to be level 60. All you need to do is get the accuracy that she needs, which is why 60 makes it a bit easier. You can get that accuracy banner, but she's going to help you. If you need 4 turns to kill the enemy, you're fighting the wrong enemy or you don't have enough nuking power. She's going to make this work. And like I said, with Stagnite, decreased defense, decreased attack is the most powerful combo of debuffs in this game for free to play, for low spend, for medium spend, for whales, for krakens, for just about everyone. This is obscene. It's easy to use. And even at 6 turns, who cares? Now, you can't use her in PvE without books. Fair enough. But that's why you have Stagnite. That's why you have Deacon. That's why you have Padma. That's why you have all these other champions. This champion is meant to be in the arena, strip buff, land the debuffs, and let your nukers go wild. That's what she's for, and she can do it without a single book in her kit. Now, when I said Demon Spawn was the greatest free-to-play world, I lied to you. Knight's Revenant has 4 champions that are plug-and-play out the box, and that's on top of ones like Miscreated Monster that I didn't even add to the list, which arguably I'm using them without books right now. Works just fine for me, but there are champions here that are just that much stronger. The first one, Doom Priest. Actually, books discouraged. You do not want books in Doom Priest. Yeah, this could be nice depending if you really need it, but why you're using her is she heals all allies by 7.5% and removes a random debuff at the start of this champion's turn. That unlocks so many different comps in the clan boss and just overall makes her a very strong support to use. She actually can hit kind of hard too with that A1. So a non-hitting ability, unless you need that increased attack, who cares? And if you use it for turn, great. But say you want a booker, it's 5 books. If you want to be crazy, if you want to go wild. But Doom Priest, books discouraged. Usually you don't want this. This 4-turn cooldown is fine. You just want her to hit champions. Hitting champions means hitting the clan boss, which means War Master procs, which means higher damage. And of course the passive means removing the stun, removing the decreased speed, removing the decreased accuracy, etc., etc. This makes her wildly strong in so many areas of the game. Keep in mind, does not work on Occult Brawler because of how his ability works, and that this is a random debuff that they actually randomized at some point, and doesn't work on Void because I believe Void can put two baby poisons. I could be wrong, but I thought it could, in which case Soza. But she is so strong out the box. She's highly survivable with good defense, good HP. Her multiplier on her A1 is stronger than it should be, and overall this is just a great champion to have in your arsenal. But she's not the only one of this group, because we also have Faceless. And Faceless, my friends, needs no books. He has no cooldowns. He has no percentage chances. He is just hit damage. His A3 ignores shield, ignores block damage, as well as defense. It's a pure damage. Now, because it's pure damage, extra books, Hurrah, you get 30% extra damage. You don't have that? Who cares? You're still hitting like an absolute murderer. On top of it, this one, again, 20% extra damage, great. If you're trying to make it so the guy can use his increased crit rate, oh, you don't need a cooldown. He's putting the increased crit rate on himself for 30% on a 3-turn cooldown without a book. And guess what? No books on the A1 either. This champion is the epitome of plug and play. You want books for damage? Go ahead. If you're Platinum Arena and you're trying to bring back the faceless era, which probably won't work well for you, but still technically can be done, yeah, throw some books in him. But not a single book needed. This guy hits like an absolute sledgehammer right out the box. Let's keep on going down the line. Skull Crown. I say this with a lot of nukers, and she's no different. If you're an arena nuker, who cares on your cooldowns? If you need cooldowns to defeat the enemy, you're doing it wrong. Plus, Skull Crown is a good counterattack champion and a good blender champion, in which case it's about her A1 anyway. Yes, it's nice if you can land this weaken. Don't need it. Yeah, it'd be great if it's 3 turns. Don't need it. She's all about just doing damage, and these 2 skills should be able to do more than enough damage. This doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, you get to put it on once. That's great. If you need it more than 4 turns, then you're probably doing something wrong. Great champion. By the way, also a speed in arena by 23%. Finally, Golden Reaper, another arena player in my opinion, and it's all about this ability here. Again, if you need the book, it's 1, although there are a lot of books in the other ones. But the reality is this increased speed and a turn meter boost by 20%, which is more than all the other free ones we talked about, the 15%ers, making her very strong out of the box. Also, 111 speed makes it very easy to make her the fastest champion in the arena, so you can get that increased speed, you can get that turn meter, and then let the rest of your champions do something. I think she is very overlooked. I have her on my account. I plan to use her. It's just because I was so focused on Clan Boss, I haven't got around to her yet. She will be in my arena team, and I probably will never put a single book in her. Last but not least on this list, one of my favorite champions in the game. But before we do that, I do want to mention that no Sylvan Watchers or Shadowkin made the list. I feel like this is something that Raid and Plarium have done with a lot of their champions. They've made a lot of conditions. They've made a lot of book choices. And when you look at some of these new champions, 3 cooldown, 75 to 100, they do this in just about every one of their champions. You look at some of their best champions and you see cooldown hidden behind 4 other books. So 5 books total, 2 cooldowns hidden here. In some cases, A1s have a debuff chance, so you can't even ignore them. They did this so often that when you pick those champions that you want to use, you need books in them, and that makes it very difficult. I believe it's intentional. I believe they want you to spend money. I believe that's why books are so scarce. But the last one on this list made it from the dwarves, and she is none other than maybe everyone's favorite on this list, Gala Longbraids. This champion is an absolute slobber knocker. I had her on my last free-to-play account, and even though I never got a really good, viable AoE champion that whole time that I played that to level 100, I believe I got to 100 or 90 something anyway, I never, ever got a good AoE nuker. But I had Gala early on, and that's all I needed. Now, she is great with books. Don't get me wrong. You put books in her, she gets way stronger. But she's an arena nuker. You get this. She attacks one enemy 3 times. She ignores 25% of defense. Grants an extra turn if this champion has full HP, which means you get to go right into this, which needs no books, only adds damage, and puts a shield on her. And then you can finish up with this, which has a shield piece to it as well. The reality is, yes, you want this to be 3 turns, but you don't need it. At the end of the day, this at 4 turns, still incredibly strong. And she has an ally attack in all battles by 25%, which is very handy in many areas of the game. Gala Longbraids might be the last of a long-dying breed that is champions that you can use out of the box without putting any books into it. There's my list of, well, cheated, but 20 champions in this game that you can use out of the box, mostly epics, a few rare exceptions, actually a few uncommon exceptions, and a legendary. But what do you think? Is there a champion I missed that you think should be on the list? Or is there a champion that you just don't think should have been on this list that I added? Let me know in the comments down below. Finally, if you like this sort of content from the new channel, which is mainly free-to-play focused, let me know in the comments down below. What would you like me to cover that would help the free-to-play player in this game, and I'll do my best to do that on a special edition, much like tonight. Thank you for watching the video. As always, please be kind, be safe, and we'll see you in the next one.